Hey everybody, Ben Johnson here, Rocky Mountain High School, to give a brief presentation on your transition year decision. I'm doing this now because I know that the district is asking people to make this decision really soon. This presentation is not endorsed by Poudre School District or Rocky Mountain High School at all. I'm just doing this to give you my unbiased advice and non-conflicted advice. I'm not going to stand to earn a penny from anything that I share with you here today, which is not true for any advisor that you might end up working with. I feel especially qualified talking about this today because I'm in the midst of a transition year currently. I've been teaching family and personal finance at CSU for the past 5 years or so. I've earned 9 certifications from Next Gen Personal Finance out of California and was recently awarded their Distinguished Personal Finance Educator with my work with them and CSU. So if you're wondering what my background is, that's just a little bit. Basically, I nerd out on this stuff if you know me at all. First and foremost, if you have any questions about your pension, the best thing to do is to pick up the phone and give them a call. They know much more about your pension. They're much more qualified to talk about it than any advisor that you might work with, or for me, for that matter. You're allowed to do a deep dive appointment with them at some point before you retire, so take advantage of that. Sign up for their webinars. Any classes that they're offering. The pension is going to probably be the majority of your retirement, and so it's really in your best interest to learn as much about it as you possibly can, and this phone number is how to make that all start. Of course, you can log into the website and you can learn about your highest average salary, your years of service, what table you're on, all those things, but eventually these are just estimates and you want to ask them for the actual numbers. It will take them about 1 to 3 days to do that for you, and then they'll send those to you through your para account, and then you can make an informed decision about when you want to retire and how much money you can expect. I'll just talk about options 1, 2, and 3 briefly while they're here. If you pick option 1, that's just going to pay you out until you die. Option 3 is going to pay you and your beneficiary, probably your spouse, out a lesser amount until both of you die. And so it's almost like a life insurance policy, I guess, if you will. This is what I recommend for most people. The anecdotal story that I tell a lot is my grandfather worked for a para-employer. My grandmother had lupus. He thought he would outlive her for sure, so he picked option 1. He got cancer, died. She went on to live another 20 or 30 years and got none of his pension. And so that's just one story, but I've heard those sorts of stories many times, and so that's why I usually recommend option 3. Now, if your spouse is financially independent and they can do fine on their own, then you could consider option 1. Option 2 might be a happy medium where you would get a smaller amount if you die before your spouse. They're going to end up getting half of this until they die. So at a very minimum, I'd recommend the second option. Know that if your spouse or your beneficiary dies before you, you'll bounce back to this option 1. So it's a nice feature of the Colorado Para Pension. A lot of people will think, geez, I can be sneaky and pick my child for option 3. It's all based on the age of the person that's your beneficiary. So if you were to pick somebody much younger than you, you would expect this number to be much smaller because, of course, they're going to live a lot longer. So typically people are just going to pick their spouse as their beneficiary. So what is the transition year? In short, you start collecting your pension, your para pension, and your teacher salary during your last year of teaching, which is pretty awesome, right? How does that work? Well, para allows you to work 110 days a year in a para position, like your teaching position, and still collect your pension. That's why it works that first year of retirement. You'll use around 100 days from August to December and about another 100 days from January to June, and so you don't exceed that 110-day rule. And so here you can see I've circled in the fall, you'll use 100 days from August to December. Calendar year ends. Next calendar year begins. Use another 100 days from January to June. You haven't broke any rules. It's only going to work that first year. After that, you'd have to move to like every other year to do this. And that's how a lot of people are able to do long-term subbing and things like that. It's up to you to keep track of this 110 days, and if you go over that in any calendar year, you can get into a lot of trouble with para, and And so you don't want to make that mistake. Some of the considerations about doing a transition year: are you done teaching? That's first and foremost. It's hard to undo this decision both with the school district and with para, and so you need to be confident that you're done teaching before you sign up for that transition year. Are you buying years with para? If so, it probably doesn't make sense to work a transition year. They're really at odds with each other. They're almost the opposite. If you're thinking about buying years, maybe you should just work one more regular year and not buy that year. Okay, know your para table. We'll look at one here in a second. That's really going to be the key to deciding whether to do a transition year, because that's going to tell you if you're out of that reduced benefit area. And that's really the time that it makes the most sense to buy a year, is if you're out of that reduced benefit area. We'll look at it in a second. Know if your highest average salary is based on 3 or 5 years. If you had 5 years of service by 2020, it's going to be 3. If you didn't have 5 years by 2020, it's going to be 5 years, the highest average 5. And that's important because it could be that, especially if you got any raises during this time, it could make sense to go ahead and work another regular para year to be able to capture those raises that you got in those last 3 to 5 years of service. And para can help talk you through that a little bit. You need to know to move your health insurance to post-tax 3 to 5 years before retirement, again, based on these dates. Okay, if you forget to do that, it's going to look like your para highest average salary is like $12,000 lower than it actually is, because that insurance to pay for your family's health insurance has been coming out of your paycheck pre-tax, and so that's going to lower your pension the rest of your life until you die. And so if you've forgotten to do that during open enrollment, it might make sense to work another regular para year or a few more para years to be able to capture that money. So during open enrollment, it's critical. If you were hired before July 1st, 2019, to move to post-tax on your health insurance, cut your FSA, cut your DC FSA, your dependent care flexible spending account, so that you can capture that highest average salary and include that in your pension the rest of your life. Again, you can only do that during open enrollment, so set a reminder on your calendar. PSD will usually send a reminder, but it doesn't hurt to do one yourself. Know if you've exceeded the 8% raise cutoff during any of those highest average salary years. And if so, it might make sense to go ahead and work another regular year, a regular para year, so that you can capture any of those raises that you got during the last 3 to 5 years. For example, maybe you took on an admin position or something. Rather than taking a transition year, it might make sense to go ahead and work one more regular para year to capture that raise that was above and beyond 8%. Otherwise, para is just going to cut it off at 8%. Know if you qualify for para health insurance subsidy, and so you'll know that once you've hit 20 years. If you've not yet hit 20 years, say you're at 19, you'd want to work one more regular para year to get to 20 so that you get the insurance subsidy, right? Understand your Social Security benefit and your spousal benefit. Remember, WEP and GPO have been removed, and so if you're a teacher that's paid into Social Security for 10 years, you're going to get a Social Security benefit. If your spouse has paid in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you can actually get 50% of their Social Security benefit as a spousal benefit. Even when they're alive, they don't have to be dead. And that's true for an ex-spouse as well. And then know if you've maxed out on the PSD salary schedule. If not, you want to do that. Perhaps work another regular para year to capture that full salary on the PSD salary schedule. Hopefully you've done that 3 to 5 years before retirement. If you've not, get to work on it. And then know what you're going to do with insurance after the transition year. Are you going to jump on Paracare? Are you going to get it on Obamacare? Are you going to do through your spouse? Are you going to do COBRA? Check out what you're going to do with insurance after that transition year. Have some idea of what it's going to cost, because again, once you make that decision to do the transition year, it's going to be too late if you've decided, oh geez, my insurance is too expensive now, to undo that decision easily. Here's what the salary or the para tables look like. This is para 2, table 2. It's pretty appealing. You could retire at age 50. with 30 years of service. As they get higher, they're worse. So by paratable 9, you're going to have to work until age 65 or until you have 35 years of experience. So when wouldn't you want to do a transition year? Well, if you're retiring in this green shaded area, you wouldn't really want to do a transition year because you're only getting 2% credit for each year that you worked through a para-employer. That's why it's a reduced benefit. If you can get out of the green shaded area, you're going to get 2.5% credit for each year that you've worked. And so that's why I wouldn't recommend taking a transition year for most people. If you're still in this green area, wait until you're out into this white area. So what are your benefits and salary going to look like? Your salary's frozen at the previous year. You're not going to get a raise. You're not going to get any steps. You're not going to get longevity pay, which is a bummer, but still pretty awesome deal. You're only going to get 6 leave days. The rest of your vacation and sick leave is wiped out. You're not going to get vacation days. Your pay will be docked if you go over those 6 days, like $500 a day. It's pretty substantial, so you really don't want to exceed those 6 days during that transition year. Your health and dental insurance is going to be paid through the end of your contract. For most teachers, that's July 31st. At that point, you have to jump on some other insurance. Didn't used to be that you had any leave days or health insurance during your transition year. You have both of those things now, and so it makes this decision to take a transition year a little bit easier than it used to be before that change was made. So I want you all to have a healthy skepticism of working with a financial advisor, even one that's provided through your 403B with the district. Why is that? Well, they're going to come across that they're doing this education, giving you this information out of the kindness of their heart, out of the goodness of their heart. And while that could be possibly true to some extent, their main goal, but they won't tell you this, is to earn your trust and then convince you and your spouse to roll over your retirement funds for them to manage until you die. Okay. Nobody is going to tell you this, but at the end of the day, this is what they're hoping for. So what's the problem with that? Well, it's going to slowly siphon 1% to 3% of your portfolio each year until you die, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you've all heard of compounding interest. Compounding loss works the same way, but it works the other direction. So due to compounding loss, assuming you live for 30 years after retirement, this could cut your portfolio in half, which is, going to be the inheritance that you give your kids, right? So then you have to decide, do I want to give this to my advisor, or do I want to give this to my kids? And you might think, oh geez, I'm going to do so much better with an advisor, it will be worth giving this up to them. The reality is there's no guarantee that you're going to do better with an advisor. In fact, due to fees, you're likely going to do much worse. Most of the portfolios I've looked at for teachers have been pretty awful. Okay, just picking a target date fund that matches the year you're planning to retire would have outperformed the vast majority of the portfolios I've looked at for teachers over the years. Okay, and that doesn't take a genius. Just pick the date that you want to start withdrawing the money, pick that target date fund, you're good. Okay, worst case, they try to get you to cash out your pension. Do not do this. Cashing out your pension for most people is the worst thing that you could do. Your pension is an awesome benefit, and for very few people does it make sense to cash it out. So don't let anybody talk you into that. Just to show you the effect that fees can have on your portfolio if you use the PSD 401k or you use a low fee brokerage like Vanguard or Fidelity to manage your IRA, they're going to take a very small management fee, something like 0.04%. And so you end up keeping most of the money in your pocket. Now, the advisor will tell you they're free often or that their fees are very small, 2%, and you'll think, oh, that's great. But here's what it ends up looking like in reality over 40 years. Your advisor is going to take 1% here. Okay. The fund manager of the funds they're putting you into, because they're high fee, actively managed funds, are going to take a cut. Believe it or not, you have to pay for their marketing. And so that takes a cut. And then finally, sometimes the funds they put you in will have front-end sales loads or back-end loads, and that's just a commission that goes back to the advisor. And so all of these fees together, even though they're only 2% over a 40-year period, you can see end up eating more than half of what would have went into your pocket. Okay, and the larger your portfolio or your spouse's portfolio, the more drastic this number will be, especially the longer the time period. And so that's why you need to have that healthy skepticism. So what can you do instead? Well, you can call PARA to ask about your pension. Remember, they're the experts. Ask all of your pension questions there. You can go to bogleheads.org. It's a free financial advice forum that's moderated by lots of awesome people with the Jack Bogle Foundation who started Vanguard. Or you can pay for hourly advice at Hello Nectarine. I'll show you those two websites at the end. And instead of having your portfolio slowly siphoned over 30 or 40 years, you're just going to pay a one-time hourly fee. Yes, is it going to be 200, 500 bucks? Yes, but it's a one-time fee and it's done. It's not draining your account the rest of your life. And then finally, I'm always happy to chat and nerd out on this stuff and would be happy to talk to you with I charge no penny. I can't earn anything off of you. And so, the information that I'm giving you is unbiased, non-conflicted. Some other considerations with this decision, again, knowing that WEP and GPO have been eliminated is awesome news. You should definitely take that into consideration with your decision of when to retire, especially knowing that if your spouse has paid into Social Security their whole life, you can get that 50% spousal benefit, which is amazing. Set up an appointment with the Social Security office here in Fort Collins to learn more about that, but it might make you decide to go ahead and retire a bit earlier, which I think is great. The cost of living adjustment with PARA is pretty awful. You have to wait 3 years before you get anything. After 3 years, you'll start to get a 0.5% to 2% based on their calculations. Currently, it's at 1%. If you've been keeping an eye on inflation the last 5 years, you'll know that 1% is not going to keep up with inflation right now. And so that's where you really want to go ahead and start working on a 401k, 457b, and IRA so that you have some other money in retirement. Again, think about those options 1, 2, or 3. Talk that through with PARA. If you're in doubt, I would pick option 3. Option 2 would be a compromise, but I still favor 3 for almost everybody. And then remember, when you do start collecting your pension, you're going to be taxed at the marginal income brackets that you land in. And so for most people, I think you can expect to be paying a 10% effective tax rate on your PARA payments, unless you've got a really high earning spouse or something, and then it could end up being more than that. But factor that in, that it's not going to all be your money, that monthly total that they give you. Know that ParaCare, if you can hit the 20 years in Para or buy the years to get there, you're going to get that $230 a month subsidized. And that will drop to $115 once you're on Medicare, but that's going to be really helpful. So try to get to the 20 years if you can, even if that means working some extra years or buying some years possibly. Keep your taxes down during your transition year. Remember, you're almost getting paid double, right? And that's going to put you into some high marginal tax brackets possibly, especially if your spouse is a high earner. So you want to go ahead and max out your traditional 401k. That would be $32,500 coming out of your paychecks that calendar year. And then you can max out your 457b on top of that, $32,500 again that calendar year. And then you can do another $8,600 into your traditional IRA, hopefully at Vanguard or Fidelity. Altogether, this should eat up, your teacher paycheck during that calendar year, and then you're just living off of your pension, and then your tax bill is very modest. And then the nice thing about this is then in retirement, you can withdraw from these more slowly and keep yourself in the marginal tax brackets that you want to end up in, so you're not paying Uncle Sam a huge amount of money by getting it all at one time during one tax year. Why do I say the 401k and the 457? Well, that's because they have the lowest fees, and assuming the same returns like a target date fund might offer, you're going to end up keeping way more money in your pocket with those compared to a 403b that comes with an advisor. You can just see that the fees end up eating a huge chunk of money. And to look at it another way, here are the fees the 401k would take, the 457 a bit more, and then you can see the 403b, much more of the fees get eaten, of your portfolio get eaten by fees. It may be after you retire, you decide to roll these things over to Fidelity or Vanguard to lower the fees even further. That might not be a bad decision either, particularly if you're stuck in a high fee 403b right now. It might make a lot of sense to go ahead and roll that over to an IRA at Vanguard or Fidelity to get your fees down. I'll just talk about purchasing years really quickly. It might be worth it if it allows you to retire earlier. Most teachers can retire 5 years earlier if they buy 5 years. It may be worth it if it moves you out of that reduced benefit area, or if it gets you into that Paracare subsidy years. So those are some good reasons to think about buying years. They're expensive, yes. Call Para to get the quote. The earlier you buy them in your career, the less expensive they're going to be. If you wait until the end of your career, they're going to be very, very pricey, but call Para to find out. You can use money from your 401k, 403b, 457 to buy years or any savings that you have. You can even take a loan from Para at 7.25% interest to buy those years. And if you laser focus, you can pay that off actually pretty quickly, and you can possibly retire 5 years earlier, which I'm all for that. So I just wanted to share the websites that I talked about. Hello Nectarine. If you just Google Hello Nectarine, it will bring this up. And they're hourly advisors. This is a teacher that I know that became an advisor. And so you can see she charges $215 an hour, which you might think is expensive, and I would agree with that. But remember, it's a one-time charge. She's giving you non-conflicted advice, and she's not siphoning money slowly off of your portfolio during the entire time that you're retired. So you may pay for a couple of hours, $500, done. She gets you on the right track, and you're good to go for, possibly a very long time. Okay, and you can pick a different advisor. This is just one that I pulled up that I've talked to before in the past. Okay. Bogleheads is a place where you can make an anonymous username. You can post any questions you have, maybe about whether you should take a transition year, that sort of thing. And there's all sorts of brilliant people here that are going to chime in, give you their suggestions, give you things to think about. And unlike Reddit, which is the Wild West, this is heavily moderated by a lot of really smart, caring people, and they don't let any shenanigans happen here. And so it's been a great financial discussion forum for me. I've done really well. I've learned a lot here, and so I would encourage you to come here, set up your account with a anonymous username, and start asking your money questions here, and I think you'll be surprised about how much you are able to learn and gather from this forum. And again, it's Jack Bogle, who founded Vanguard. It's his foundation that runs bogleheads.org, which is his namesake, Jack Bogle, as you can mention. Anyways, good luck with the decision. Let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully some of this was helpful. Appreciate you listening.